An engagement is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Funerals, they can wait. The night before, my cousin sneered as she brushed past me. Her words cut through me like glass. And the worst part was, she wasn't the only one who thought it. Hi everyone, my name is Melissa. On the day I buried my husband, the man who held me when storms ripped through my life, my entire family was at my sister's engagement party instead. Not one parent, not my best friend, not a single sibling. I remember standing there at the church doors, staring at the empty pews, my hands trembling against the cold wood of the coffin. The silence was deafening, broken only by the pastor's voice and the wind rattling the stained glass windows. Inside, I kept telling myself, maybe they'll come. Maybe someone will walk in late but repentant. But each minute passed like a cruel reminder that I was utterly, deliberately abandoned. As the casket was lowered, the earth swallowing the last piece of him, I gripped the folded funeral program until it tore in my hand. Tears blurred my vision, but my body wouldn't let me sob. I had to stand tall because no one else would stand with me. That's when my phone lit up. One message glowing against the dark screen. We need to talk. Now. Then 36 missed calls. Her timing was brutal. Her absence was louder than thunder. In that moment, something inside me shifted. Grief and betrayal fused together, sparking something cold, sharp, and unyielding. I looked at the hole in the ground, then at the phone in my hand. A cruel irony wrapped itself around me like smoke. While I buried love, they celebrated champagne and diamonds. And as the dirt began to cover the casket, I whispered one silent vow into the chilled air. They chose their side, and soon they would know what it meant to lose everything they took for granted. I didn't answer those calls. Not a single one. My phone buzzed and trembled in my palm like it was possessed, the vibration echoing against the emptiness of the graveside. I slipped it into my purse and let it suffocate in silence. The burial ended with polite condolences from strangers, neighbors, a few of his co-workers, faces I barely recognized. They offered me hollow words, touched my shoulder lightly, then slipped away to their cars. No family, no familiar warmth, just shadows leaving me behind. When the last shovel of dirt hit the grave, I stood frozen. My legs wanted to collapse, but my heart had already done that hours ago. That's when the truth struck me like lightning. I had no one, at least not in the family that claimed to love me. I walked to my car, the world around me blurry with grief and disbelief. The laughter from across town at the engagement party seemed to seep into my bones like poison. I could almost hear my sister's giggle, my mother's proud voice, my father's toast. They hadn't just skipped my husband's funeral. They had chosen her celebration over my devastation. As I sat in the driver's seat, I finally unlocked my phone. The messages stared back at me. We need to talk now. Call me immediately. This isn't what you think. Pick up. Then one from my best friend. Sorry, I couldn't miss it. You understand, right? Understand? My chest burned. How could I understand that the people who should have held me upright on the darkest day of my life were clinking glasses under fairy lights instead? I leaned back against the headrest, staring up at the gray sky. The weight of betrayal pressed against me harder than grief. And beneath it all, a quiet rage began to bloom. I whispered into the silence of the car, more to myself than anyone. If this ever happened to you, say same in the comments. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't the only one who'd been abandoned when it mattered most. But unlike others, I wasn't going to let it end there. I would let the silence grow. Let them panic at my unanswered calls. Let them sweat in their fine dresses and tuxedos, wondering why I hadn't picked up. I wouldn't chase them. No, I would wait. And when they came crawling to me, because they would, I'd be ready with something colder than grief. A plan. The next morning, my doorbell rang. Not once, not twice, but over and over until the sound carved itself into my skull. When I opened it, there she was, my mother, dressed in the same silk dress she'd worn to my sister's engagement party. I could still smell perfume, champagne, and celebration clinging to her skin. Her hair was pinned perfectly, as if grief hadn't touched her at all. We need to talk, she said, voice clipped, rehearsed, almost businesslike. I didn't move. I just stared at her, my hand gripping the edge of the door like it was the only thing holding me upright. You missed his funeral, I whispered. My voice cracked. She blinked, annoyed. Sweetheart, it was unfortunate timing. Your sister's engagement was important, a once-in-a-lifetime event. You'll understand one day. I let out a bitter laugh, low and sharp. Important? You're telling me champagne and cake outweighed burying the man who treated me better than this entire family ever has. Her face hardened. Don't be dramatic. Life moves forward. Dwelling on death won't change anything. My heart sank. The woman who gave me life couldn't even look me in the eye as she dismissed my loss. And yet, behind her words, I saw something else. Not guilt, but fear. Then she said it. The line that made my grief twist into something more dangerous. She leaned in carefully. We need to settle some matters now that he's gone. You have responsibilities and frankly, certain assets shouldn't be left in your hands alone. Her eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway of my house. She wasn't here for me. She wasn't here for him. She was here for what was left behind. My nails dug into the wood of the door. The silence between us stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Finally, I stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, Mom, I said, voice steady. Now let's talk. She exhaled in relief, mistaking my calm for surrender. But inside, I was already miles ahead. Because if she thought I was going to roll over and let them take from me after abandoning me, then she didn't know the daughter she had created. This was no longer about grief. It was about payback. The living room still smelled faintly of lilies from the funeral arrangements, their petals already beginning to curl. My mother sat on the edge of the sofa, her dress rustling as she crossed her legs, acting as though this were a business meeting. Era, she began, her tone clipped. You're young. You don't understand how the world works. Your husband, God rest his soul, he left behind assets, the house, the savings, even his company shares. It isn't wise for you to handle all that alone. Your father and I think it's best if everything is redistributed. The word slammed into me. Redistributed. I stared at her, watching her sip the glass of water I had offered, like she was entitled to every drop in my house. Redistributed to who? I asked, though I already knew. To your sister, of course. She's starting her new life with her fiancé. She'll need support. And well, you'll be fine. You're strong. Strong. That word had always been their excuse. Strong meant I didn't need care, didn't deserve compassion. Strong meant they could strip me bare, and I'd stand smiling. But not this time. I leaned back in my chair, eyes never leaving her face. So you skipped my husband's funeral to toast her engagement. And now you've come here to ask for his legacy too. She shifted uncomfortably, but her chin lifted in defiance. Don't twist this. It's family duty. Your sister deserves the best. Don't be selfish. Selfish. Another knife. My fingers curled against the armrest, but my voice stayed calm, almost too calm. You think I'm selfish because I won't hand over what my husband built with his own hands? You think grief makes me weak? Her eyes narrowed. She thought she had me cornered. She mistook my stillness for hesitation. But inside me, something cold was crystallizing. Their betrayal at the funeral had already severed something fragile inside me. And now her greed was hammering the final nail into the coffin of whatever bond remained between us. I rose from my seat slowly, every movement deliberate. I'll think about it, I said, my tone polite, even warm. Her face brightened instantly, relief washing over her. She touched my arm lightly as she stood. Good girl. I knew you'd come around. I walked her to the door, watching her leave with a self-satisfied smile. The second the door clicked shut, I whispered into the silence. Not a chance. They had chosen to abandon me at my darkest hour. Now I would show them what abandonment truly felt like. The moment my mother's car pulled away, I sat at the dining table and let the silence settle. My husband's photo stared back at me from the mantel, his steady eyes, his smile frozen in time. I won't let them erase you, I whispered. Not like this. Grief might have broken me, but betrayal sharpened me. And if my family thought they could strip me of what little I had left, they were about to meet a different version of me. That night, I pulled out the lockbox my husband always kept in the study. Inside were neatly stacked documents, the will, the deed, the business contracts. He had left everything to me. Everything. Not a single line mentioned my family. It was all mine. his final act of trust. But trust came with responsibility, and I wouldn't let his sacrifice fall into greedy hands. The next morning, I made my first call. Not to my mother, not to my sister, but to our family lawyer, Mr. Daniels. His voice was calm, deliberate, and just a little surprised when I told him what had happened. "Era," he said. "Your husband was clear in his instructions. No one can contest this easily, but if your family tries, you'll need to be prepared." Prepared? That word rang in my ears like a bell. I met with him the following day, the documents neatly tucked in my bag. As we reviewed every clause, every signature, a plan began to take shape. Quiet, precise. I wouldn't confront them with anger. I'd let the law itself be my shield. Meanwhile, my phone kept buzzing. Texts, missed calls, even voicemails. My father's voice dripped with authority. "You're being childish. Call your mother back." My sister's messages were smug. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You'll thank us one day." But the one that chilled me came late at night from an unknown number. "Sign the papers or you'll regret it." I stared at that message until the screen dimmed, my pulse steadying instead of racing. They thought fear would bend me, but fear had burned out of me the moment I stood alone at my husband's grave. I wasn't afraid anymore. If they wanted war, they would get it. But it wouldn't be loud or messy. My revenge would be silent, and it would leave them with nothing but regret. It was a Sunday evening when they arrived. All of them. My mother, my father, my sister with her glittering new ring, and even my so-called best friend trailing behind like a shadow. They didn't knock gently. They pounded. The kind of pounding that wasn't a request, but a demand. When I opened the door, the air shifted. My mother walked in first, eyes sweeping the house like it already belonged to her. My father followed, his jaw clenched, his presence heavy. My sister smiled, a sharp, satisfied smile, and sat down without invitation. "Era," my father began. "This has gone far enough. You've ignored our calls, our messages. You're acting irrational. We're here to settle this now." I stood near the window, the fading light casting shadows across the room. "Settle what?" My voice was steady, almost casual. "The assets." My mother snapped. "Your sister deserves her share. She's starting her life. You don't need all of this, and holding on to it makes you look bitter." Bitter. That word stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I let the silence hang heavy until it made them restless. Finally, my sister leaned forward, her tone syrupy and cruel. "Come on, he's gone. You don't need all these things to remember him. Let us take care of it." I met her eyes. "You want me to give up everything my husband built? Everything he trusted me with?" She smirked. "You make it sound ugly. We just want what's fair." Fair? The word twisted in my chest like a blade. Where was fairness when I stood alone at his grave? Where was fairness when they chose champagne over condolences? I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I simply walked to the mantel, lifted my husband's framed photo, and held it to my chest. Then I turned to them and said softly, "You left me alone when I needed you most. You abandoned him when he deserved your respect. And now you'll learn what abandonment feels like." Their faces shifted. Confusion, then irritation, then something almost like fear. But I didn't give them answers. Not yet. Instead, I opened the door wide and gestured toward it. "Leave. Now. The next time we talk, it won't be here. It'll be in a place where truth is written in ink and sealed with law." My father's voice thundered. "Don't test us, Era." I met his stare, my grip tightening on the photo. "I already have." They left in silence, slamming the door behind them. And in that silence, I allowed myself the faintest smile. Because what they didn't know was that every document had already been fortified. Every move of theirs had already been anticipated. They thought they were circling me, but in reality, I had already built the cage. The letter went out the next morning. Thick cream paper embossed with the seal of Mr. Daniels' law office. One copy to my parents, one to my sister, one even to my so-called best friend, whose betrayal still stung like salt in an open wound. It was simple, direct, and devastating. Notice of estate distribution. Every line of my husband's will laid bare. The house, the savings, the shares all left solely to me. His explicit words were crystal clear. Impossible to contest without exposing themselves as greedy opportunists. By noon, the storm began. My phone buzzed endlessly. Furious messages, desperate voicemails. My father's voice was thick with rage. How dare you humiliate this family with lawyers? We could have handled this privately. My mother wept into the phone, her tears as performative as ever. You don't understand what you're doing, you're tearing us apart. And my sister, oh, her words were poison wrapped in sugar. You'll regret this when you have no one left. Don't come crawling back. Enjoy your empty house. I listened to each message in silence. Not replying, not defending, just letting their desperation echo back at them like a mirror. By midweek, things escalated. My mother showed up at the lawyer's office, causing a scene so loud the secretary later described it to me in hushed tones like a scandal. My father tried to intimidate Mr. Daniels with threats of family honor. My sister flaunted her fiancé's family wealth, as if it could tip the scales of justice. But it didn't matter. Every time they lunged, they collided with the unshakable truth of the will. My husband had given me everything legally, permanently, untouchably. And here's the poetic part. With every move they made, they revealed themselves to neighbors, to friends, to the same community that had once admired them. Their obsession with my inheritance spread like wildfire, whispers tarnishing their perfect image. Meanwhile, I remained silent, composed, presenting myself not as the bitter widow they painted, but as the wronged daughter standing her ground with dignity. The silence wasn't weakness, it was my weapon. And as their reputations crumbled, as their desperation grew louder, I realized something beautiful. They had already lost. They just didn't know how completely. Not yet. The breaking point came at my sister's wedding rehearsal dinner. I hadn't been invited, of course, but news travels fast in our town. Whispers found their way to me. The caterer pulling out, the florist canceling, the venue demanding payment up front because the family's reputation had soured. And then the cruelest irony, the engagement funds my parents had promised her, frozen, because the savings they planned to redistribute were mine, locked tightly in accounts they could no longer touch. That night, while fairy lights dimmed over a rehearsal stripped bare, my phone lit up again. Not with threats, not with anger, but with a single trembling voice. My mother, she whispered, her breath shaky. Please, they're all looking at us differently now. We need your help. I sat at my kitchen table, the will spread out before me, my husband's signature steady and strong. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me, remembering the grave, the empty pews, the casket lowered without them. And then I smiled, a calm, deliberate smile. I needed you once too, Mom, I said softly. And you chose champagne over compassion. Now you'll learn what that choice costs. Her sob cracked through the phone, but I didn't linger. I ended the call with the same quiet finality they had given me on the day of the funeral. Days later, the wedding went on, but stripped, humbled, a shell of the grand affair they had envisioned. Guests murmured about the missing luxuries, about the whispers of greed. And my sister walked in her gown not with pride, but with shame. As for me, I didn't show up. I spent that day at the cemetery laying fresh lilies at my husband's grave. I told him everything. How silence had been my blade. How dignity had been my armor. How betrayal had undone itself without me ever needing to scream. The wind moved through the trees gently as though he was listening. And I knew then with a certainty that filled every vein in my body. They had abandoned me, but I had buried them too. Not in earth, not in stone, but in the truth of their own choices. And nothing, no apology, no regret, could unearth them.